Alright, so if you're a gamer that hates the predatory practices in the industry, then you might really want to see the Sensor Tower revenue report for 2024. I know that many people have been soured on the report because of some very adamant creators, but I'm pretty sure in this one case at least, they'd actually be pretty glad to be wrong. So in a future video, I'm going to talk more about Sensor Tower specifically and why it's probably reliable. But in this video, I'm just going to focus on why you're going to hope it's accurate, particularly if you're a big fan of the Big Four. Now, because of the quartet this year, Wuthering and Zenless 0 won big, and it's not even close. And I mean for the companies, not for the players. We know the players like them. What does winning mean for the company? That's successful monetization, which on this chart is going to be represented down here. So the goal for the company when releasing a game is twofold. They want to acquire an audience and convert that audience into spenders. And now the second factor weights more because no game just wants to be a charity. No one wants to just be a daycare. So it's commonly thought, though, that the predatory monetization systems are necessary because the company has to make money. So you'll hear your favorite content creators parrot this idea, many members of the community, especially when they defend things like the 50-50. Oh, they need to make more money. It's a big game. It's not true. And the point of this video, with the aid of the very controversial Sensor Tower report for help, is to end this narrative. Because very clearly, it's showing that your generosity, your freedom, fun, and value, those are the predatory tools that you use to leech money out of players, at least in 2024. So let's prove it. Let's look at first the revenue. This is the Sensor Tower report compiled nicely for everyone to see. These are the totals of the year for the Big Four. And this is the active players according to activeplayer.io and priority data. Also, I think Statista gave me a little bit of it. But either way, this is the active players over the year. And you can see the differences in the numbers. So the first thing to know is that the revenue report does not show the monetization in the same way that the GDP does not show the quality of life or standard of living. You need to analyze the revenue in comparison to the player numbers. So that's why most of the content discussing the revenue report was flawed, and it gave impressions that were very difficult to explain, like why Hoyoverse was treating Genshin players like unwanted stepchildren. Why did they invest so much more in HSR and then even more in Zenless? Isn't Zenless a flop? Why didn't Wuthering EOS? Why are they giving away good 5 stars when they're hemorrhaging revenue? So, all these questions arose from just comparing one big number to another big number and not having the context of the player numbers. Now, people even commonly made incorrect assumptions about player numbers, like Wuthering and Zenless, because of not looking it up, assuming that the losses in revenue meant that there were losses in players, and the opposite was actually true. And, if you just think about it, does people not spending on a game mean they're not happy in the game? No, it means that the company might not be happy. But if the game can be enjoyed with money that you spent previously, that means that the money that you spent has more value. As we're going to point out later, that's an incentive to spend if the money you spend has more value. So anyway, in reality, there's 2 other considerations that make it all make sense without the need for any weird conspiracies. The first consideration is the platform. All the numbers that you're seeing here are just on mobile. And now the revenue report isn't obviously mobile, but the active players are also. We don't have numbers to represent PC players and console players. Now, most people would make that argument desperately in defense of Wuthering Waves or Zenless, but not know how to actually represent it or why it was a point, because obviously the same thing is true for Genshin and HSR. They also have other players, but why does that matter? Because in the case of Genshin and HSR, you can see that the dominance of their population is on mobile, and therefore the dominance of their revenue is going to represent probably the dominance of their revenue, total revenue. They're worldwide, across all platforms. It's not going to be the same if you're looking at 60 times the size of the Wuthering audience and you have more YouTube subscribers than you have players on mobile for Wuthering. And we know that. We know why the mobile showing for both Wuthering and Zenless is probably much lower than for PC and console now. So nonetheless, on their worst platform, this number should be nowhere near the size of this number if this audience is 60 times the size. And so that's what we're going to break down. So what are the numbers telling us? From a Genshin player, this is the value to the company. A Genshin player was worth $12 a year. An HSR player was worth 3 times as much. A Zenless player was worth $141 a year. And a Wuthering Waves player was worth $216 a year. The point is that whatever Wuthering and Zenless are doing, it does a drastically better job of converting players into spenders. That's the good news, because we know that both games are notoriously less predatory and more inclined to listen to the players. And that's why it's good news for everybody playing all of these games. It's not really about which game is better. Converting players into spenders, that's only one part. Punishing Grey Raven does a better job than all 4. They average about $300 to $360 a year per player. But that game is so niche, its audience is so small, that it doesn't overcome, that incredible player spending ratio doesn't put it in the Big Four, obviously. So the second part of monetization, as explained earlier, is the ability to attract an audience. and there Genshin is king. But is it enough to overcome its really poor player conversion rate? Now, to get a better view of the player population, too many P's, player population ratios, we have to consider the ratios that are platform independent. Your PS5 ratios imply that the populations might actually be rather close. Your YouTube trailer views are completely independent of platform, and they definitely suggest that the populations might be closer. Your Google Trends ratios. The most Genshin favored is the YouTube subscribers. So let's start there, because like I said, it's not even going to be close. So we can use the worst ratio to guess at the size of Wuthering and Zenless and see why it really doesn't matter, that their systems are just better. Now, we know that Genshin has about 60 million players on mobile. Let's just round that up to 100 million when you include PC and PS5. I think people could agree that sounds reasonable considering the phenomenon that Genshin is. So that would mean that at their conversion rate, they would make $1.2 billion worldwide in 2024. So using the worst ratio, 7-to-1 in favor of Genshin, compared to Wuthering and Zenless for YouTube subscribers, you see that you'd only have about 14 million players for Wuthering and Zenless if Genshin has 100 million. And it's not even close. Wuthering would make $2 billion off of those 14 million players. It gets even worse if you look at the Google Trends ratio, and it's just downright atrocious if you were actually to consider the PS5 or the actual trailer views as an indication of how many people are actually playing the game. So either way, the point is that it's great news. These games, they trend higher on devs listening. That's what they're known for. Simply put, the revenue analysis for 2024 implies that the best way to get the most money out of your audience is to be like these games. That's why I wanted everyone to know this. That's why it's good news for all, even if you don't like any of these games, right? Listen to your players, focus on gameplay, focus on player freedom, stop paywalling fun, stop trying to trick your players into buying three things that they don't want just to get the one thing that they do want to work. HSR team building, Genshin team building. Stop using game mechanics to completely negate people's ability to use the characters they like. Those predatory systems devalue spending. The more you devalue spending, the less of an incentive you give to most normal people to spend. That's literally what being predatory is. The more that you say your $5 spent might mean nothing, because 6 months of it can get lost in a 50-50. We can completely negate the character you bought last month with the character you buy this month. It's telling most rational people that it's not worth it to spend money. I'll just take my chances on whatever's free. So, because it's important to note, this has nothing to do with which game is of best quality. That's way too subjective, and the sheer popular vote would obviously go to Genshin and HSR. The standout comparison is the systems that are different between them. That if you have 60 million people that love your game, why aren't they giving you any money in comparison to the people that love these games? And it's because you're just devaluing their money to the point where they don't want to give it to you. So you give players value, they'll give you money. And so with so many heavy hitters entering the industry in the next few years, I couldn't be happier to see it in 4K, that the less predatory the game is, the more players spend. Because, like I said, less predatory, because these games still have a way to go. Like, they're still not converting the way that Punching Bear Raven is. But I like seeing that this trend, they are less predatory, and players are spending more. Let's keep going in that direction. So tell me what you think. Any data that goes against what I'm concluding here, I'd be happy to see it. I love being wrong, because that means I can be right next time. And so don't hesitate to share, especially data. If you agree, though, and you're excited to see these results, then please tell a friend, so we can start to kind of overcome this predatory is necessary narrative. I really hate hearing that in the community. Gamers showed up big this year. They voted with their wallets, and they gave people money for giving them value. Let's not let that effort get swept under the rug by a misunderstanding about Sensor Tower. I'll tackle that more directly in the reliability of that data in the next video, as well as pointing out how Hoyo's response with Genshin and Zenless to Wuthering success also confirmed the validity of the data. So stay tuned if you're interested for those things, but that's a wrap for this one. As always, thanks for watching.